If you take a look at recent Marvel Comics events and try and find some of the worst ones the publisher has to offer, I think Civil War II would be a very strong contender. But in Marvel Comics, even some good things can come out of a bad story, including the introduction of a new Wasp, Nadia Van Dyne. As Marvel Comics continued to go ahead and publish this character after her first appearance in the Free Comic Book Day issue via the Unstoppable Wasp series, written by Jeremy Whitley with art from Elsa Charretier. I love this title and think that it fleshed out Nadia with such an interesting perspective. In the sequel series, we learned about some of Nadia's own struggle with her mental health issues, and we saw her really kind of come into her own and form the Girl Research Lab. My name is Ara Kobranok, and today, let's go ahead and celebrate Marvel's brand new Wasp series featuring Ant-Man writer Al Ewing, returning to the Ant-Man universe with the Wasp character. Sadly, Al Ewing is not returning with Tom Reilly, but instead we get the gorgeous artwork from Kasia Nie. But before we get deeper into the video, I want to go ahead and encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button if you enjoy our content. Next up, I want to go ahead and introduce a little bit more context behind this brand new Wasp series by reading Marvel Comics solicitation text for the issue. Fashion designer, businesswoman, founding Avenger, Janet Van Dyne has worn many hats over the course of her superheroic career. But when an old enemy threatens Janet and her fellow Wasp, Nadia, seemingly against his will, the Van Dynes will have to confront the ghosts in their shared history to get to the bottom of the mystery. Join fan favorite creators Al Ewing and Kasia Nie as they celebrate 60 years of the Wasp. And let's go ahead and kick things off as well by introducing our creative team behind Wasp #1. This issue is written by Al Ewing. We have art from Kasia Nie, colors from KJ Diaz, letters from VC's Cory Petit, and Tom Reilly did actually return for some beautiful covers that kind of continue the look at how Ant-Man only kind of featured a portion of the profile of the character. Let me go ahead and show off the beautiful Tom Reilly cover right now with a look at Wasp #1. I just love the way the color is designed. I love kind of like the use of negative space in the logo, and just kind of like the 60s aesthetic that we also get from Tom Reilly's art that was such a big part of that Ant-Man title. So I'm so happy to see that so many aspects of Marvel comics continuity and the Wasp character have been realized through this cover alone. And take a look at how beautiful this credits page is. It kind of, turns the Wasp drawing into a silhouette and then shows off kind of the creative team behind the issue. It's just incredible graphic design over from Carlos Lau, the graphic designer. And next up, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the preview pages for the issue. Thank you to Adventurers in Poor Taste for posting these previews. And this book is so cool because it's written by Al Ewing. Al Ewing is like a steward of Marvel Comics history, and whenever Ewing gets a chance to dig deep into Marvel Comics lore, he does. And the end result is, diving deeper into the Van Dyne family than I ever have before, and even, introduced to Janet Van Dyne's father, Vernon Van Dyne, in this issue that kind of kicks things off really nicely and makes the issue feel incredibly personal. And you can see this kind of mysterious villain that we get lingering throughout the series over in this preview page. And even despite the fact that this is a really gruesome page, there's something kind of slick and clean about it, which I think is coming through from the art from Kasia Nie and the colors from KJ Diaz. I just kind of love the way that even though Vernon is kind of like on the cusp of death here, he just looks so cool thanks to the facial expressions from Nie. Also, I just love how kind of like moody and detailed this art is. I think Kasia Nie has a great time kind of toying with some of the perspectives in this issue, you know, being an Ant-Man adjacent comic book series, which is just kind of so fun to explore and dive deeper into throughout the issue. I'd say one of the other things that this series does super well is kind of introduce aspects of old Avengers history that we don't get referenced that much today through the character of Janet Van Dyne. So really good to kind of have like that old classic Avengers tone explored through this issue, because that's also a really, really important part of Janet's characterization. And I also want to take a step back and want to say that this book is kind of, it's not only focused on Nadia, but Janet as well. As, you know, these characters are both carrying the Wasp name and both, you know, have different ties to, you know, Hank Pym, which is also really interesting, kind of the original and most famous Ant-Man of the bunch kind of throughout this issue. And, you know, it's great to kind of go ahead and catch up with Janet, but it's also good to catch up with Nadia as well, because Nadia's kind of problems and perspective are just so much different from Janet. And I think when you combine the two of them together and write them really well and give them a lot of perspective, it really kind of helps meld two different universes into one cohesive comic book storyline. Plus, I mean, I know we've already said this in the review, but I just have to give it to Al Ewing, because if you take a look at the girl, the Genius in Action Research Labs, you know, emblem being held, you know, in the background of the issue, we see that there is kind of like a full commitment to that Unstoppable Wasp comic book, which I really like to see. I really like to see all that continuity referenced there. And plus, we even get like some actual kind of 60s flashbacks throughout the issue, which looked gorgeous over from Kasia Nie, where, you know, Janet kind of re-explores her origin story. So we get kind of the origin story for Nadia referenced and Janet referenced within the same issue. This is a really dense comic book. As you can see, there's tons of speech bubbles, but just kind of like the ideas that Ewing is exploring throughout this issue are just so, you know, fascinating and nuanced. There's parallels drawn between these two characters. There's kind of like differences. There's so many themes explored throughout this series as well. I sadly never got the chance to review Ant-Man over on my channel, so I wanted to make good and be sure to go ahead and, you know, cover this Wasp series in a lot of depth. One of the other things that I really enjoyed about this issue is kind of the mystery behind the series. And the mystery kind of gets deeper and deeper as you go in the issue, which is just kind of the interesting way that Al Ewing just sort of naturally writes comic books, you know, over on the page, which is just fantastic. So those are my thoughts over on Wasp #1. I think this is a really solid issue, you know, showcasing great characterization for not only Nadia Van Dyne, but also Janet Van Dyne as well. If you've been waiting for Marvel to give Nadia a new home, this is a great place to go ahead and read more about the Wasp character. And, you know, if you're maybe a fan of Janet Van Dyne from back in the day and want to go ahead and reminisce on some of those old Avengers memories, this is a great way to get reintroduced kind of back into the Marvel universe. Also, I want to commend Marvel because this is such a specialized niche project, and for Marvel to have greenlit not only the Ant-Man series, but the Wasp series from Al Ewing kind of gives me a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more confidence in the publisher's current direction, because I think Al Ewing is among some of the strongest writers at the publisher, and I'm sure Marvel would probably want Al Ewing on a bigger title than the Wasp, but it's these kind of smaller, more homespun stories featuring characters that Marvel has explored for a long time that I think make the Marvel Universe feel like a real kind of lived-in place. So I'm very happy to include this brand new Wasp series among the great Wasp titles like the Unstoppable Wasp. But I want to know from you, did you like this issue as much as I did? What were your thoughts on this brand new Wasp series? Thank you guys so much for checking out the video, and we will be back very soon with more excellent comic book content. Thank you guys so much. Bye.